Welcome back, traders and investors, to Benzinga's pre-market prep, brought to you by Marketfy. I'm your co-host Joel Elconin, along with Spencer Israel, and we have Alan Brochstein on. He is the author of the 420 Investment Letter, joining us here to talk about the marijuana market and pot stocks. How you doing today, Alan?
I'm doing great. Good to be back.
All right, thanks for coming on here. Short notice. Let's just first talk about Canada, and the U.S. has been making some moves as far as regulations go, and Canada. I mean, but this is going on for quite some time here. Are they going to finally join the U.S. and in the changing of the laws?
I've been on your show several times and very bullish about Canada. And one of the wild cards that I was excited about played out, and that was they just had an election. It was Monday a week ago, and it was not a huge surprise, but I think that the fact that the Liberals won a majority and there wasn't even a coalition was a big positive. And the reason for that is Justin Trudeau is a very vocal advocate for cannabis. So many of your listeners may not know they already have a legal federal medical marijuana program, and I think even without adult use there, that really justifies investment in some of these companies. But now, with the specter of the whole nation going legal, there's really a lot of support under the market right now.
All right. So, is there how if it does go through here? Is there a way to invest or capitalize on it? I forget the name of that one stock that we've been talking to for.
Tweed?
Yeah,
Is
Tweet.
that the one?
Okay. Yeah. Let's
So
talk
Tweed
about.
changed names. It's now Canopy Growth. My favorite name in the space was originally Bedrocan, and I think I told you guys last time I was on. I went to Canada, went to Tweed, went to Bedrocan, also visited Afria. Well, right after I went, they Tweed bought Bedrocan, uh, and so the combined company is now called Canopy Growth. The symbol in Canada is CGC. I don't think you guys get those Canadian charts. It's near an 52-week high. Tweed at the time, Canopy Growth now, went public. It was the first one to go public. It had a lot of growing pains. It is really an institutional play. Big players there. It's traded since the election. It's been trading several $1 million a day in trading volume. Uh, so that's exciting. They actually announced last night that they're expanding to Jamaica. So it's truly a global opportunity. It's one of my favorites, and for full disclosure, it's about 18% of one of my model portfolios. Uh, in the U.S., there's a tracking ticker, TWMJF, but it's really better to look at and to trade the Canadian symbol, CGC, on the Toronto Venture. There's other names in Canada as well, some of them more speculative than others. Um, I count about 6 licensed producers or companies that own licensed producers that are trading publicly. There's also, I'm not even going to say the ticker because I'm not really happy about this, but there's a U.S., I think Delaware-based company, but it's really operated out of Canada, and they just bought one of these licensed producers. There's only 26 licenses in all of Canada right now.
Wow. Okay. All right. Well, we'll see. And what was that one company that's?
Phoenix?
Yeah. I always
Oh
mention
yeah,
that
they
one.
they still have. I visited their facility as well, but I only looked through the gate, through the fence, and that's tied up in litigation right now. They have, I don't know, $10 million in debt and a pretty worthless business unless they can uh, catch a Hail Mary, apparently. So
Okay, let's talk about the best in breed here, GW Pharma. It's a stock that you've been talking about with me for a couple years now. Now you've had a significant pullback here, and
yes,
let's see, is it? Let me see, is it epi? It's not epipluralsin. What is the?
Epidiolex.
Oh, I got the E right. Okay,
Yep.
so we
Oh
come.
yeah. So well,
Yeah.
so on. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Uh, well, got over 130. Now back at the $80 level. Little consolidation here. Were you able to take some profits in it and looking to reload?
Yeah, so the last time I was on, I talked about I think I talked about, I know it was right after I sold about 3/4 of the position. So for those that don't follow the space, this is really one of the only truly investable U.S. names. There's other more speculative names, and believe me, this one's speculative too. But it's listed on the Nasdaq, has the ability to raise capital, and has late stage clinical trials. And so in the summer, I started to get nervous from a valuation perspective, but also a few fundamental things, the timing of Epidiolex news being more near year end, and also some news that I'll talk about in just a second that came out earlier this week. And so the issues primarily have been the big pullback in biotech. We've had about a 43% peak to trough from 134 to 76. Retracement, a little bit worse than the overall biotech market, but if you can stack it up, it looks like it's pretty much driven by just the overall correction in biotech. That's what's really been going on. I started to add back to the position in the high 80s, I guess, just very recently. And then I added yet again below 80 to my longer term model portfolio. I also have positions in a shorter term model portfolio, but this week. And so the news this week was something I expected. It's one of these things you never know what other people know or how they're going to process it. But they have another drug called Sativex. It's actually on the market in other countries around the world. They were going for 2 different phase 3 trials in the United States. The first one that they wanted to present to the FDA was for advanced cancer pain. Sativex is a cannabis-derived drug that has about an equal ratio of THC and CBD. It's around the rest of the world. It's used to treat a disease called MS spasticity. That's a symptom associated with multiple sclerosis. Here they were going for advanced cancer pain early in the year, and the stock got whacked that day earlier this year. They announced a setback in their clinical trials, phase 3 trials. They had 3 arms. In the first arm, the U.S. results were statistically significant, but not the ones that were done overseas. And so they had warned, and this is what I knew it wasn't going to work. They had basically said these other 2 arms will not work. The news came out this week. They paired it smartly with some very positive news about Australia, which is rapidly becoming or about to become a global leader in cannabis research. I don't know, it's not called a province, the state, I guess, of New South Wales, that's where Sydney is. They received a very generous, their university received a very generous donation earlier this year from a family that had been impacted by epilepsy. The government itself created a fund, and about 25% of that is going to fund GW clinical trials in Australia on Epidiolex and CBDV, which is a different cannabinoid. So very good news for GW. The story's totally intact. Sativex would be nice because it's nice to be more than a one-trick pony. But like you said earlier, Joel, the one-trick pony, the trick is Epidiolex.
Okay. All right. Another stock you'd like to talk about, MSRT, Mass Roots Inc. Now, I'm jogging my memory here. Is this the one that kind of has like the little network of?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead. Let's
You
talk.
got it. It's a social media network. A lot of people like to liken it to Facebook or Instagram. For people not familiar with it, let me tell you the secret there. The secret is that cannabis use is still subject to huge stigma. That people don't want their employers to know, family members, if they're in politics. There's all sorts of reasons, religious reasons. And so because of this, the traditional social media doesn't work for people that really want to talk about their cannabis consumption. So Mass Roots gets around that problem. And at the same time, it gets around another problem from a business perspective. Cannabis companies in general face extremely challenging advertising restrictions. Very difficult. As a matter of fact, I myself have run into problems with one of my Facebook sites. Facebook will not let me, and I don't touch cannabis, at least professionally. And, my business is not about cannabis or promoting cannabis use, but Facebook shot us down. So Mass Roots is creating an advertising network to really tap into this network. And they're using big data to mine the hashtags and stuff in their community to facilitate that. So the story I wanted to tell today, and this is an expensive stock, don't get me wrong, and the revenues are just getting started. So it's a little bit on the come. But the company made an announcement, I think in September, that maybe it was late August. I'm trying to remember exactly when they made the announcement. They are pursuing a NASDAQ listing, and they don't have all the qualifications initially. They have to raise a little bit of capital. They filed an S1 for that and amended it. They would also probably have to do a reverse split. But beyond that, it appears that it's very possible they could be listed on the NASDAQ, or if not there, the New York Stock Exchange, MKT, I guess they call it now, the former Amex. So this opens up the investment universe dramatically. People do not like to invest in OTC stocks. This would open up the stock to institutional investment potentially, and certainly better liquidity, more trading. So I think that's kind of an exciting story from a short-term perspective if they can get that done, but also from a longer-term perspective, to me it's an exciting story. It's very easy to argue about the valuation.
Does it have any earnings?
Earnings, no. They just started producing revenue.
Okay.
They have eyeballs, that old story. So that it's incumbent upon them to start to prove out their business model. When they came public, they said that they weren't going to start to monetize till they hit 1 million users. They actually began when they crossed 500,000. They're probably at about 600,000 right now. At the end of September, they were at 575. I think that was at the end of September, but they're probably about 650. They're adding a lot of people per month.
Okay, we got a couple questions coming out of the chat here. One
Sure.
is kind of fundamental from Chris S. Tex. How are high levels of CO2 enabling better marijuana crops?
Wow, that's a little bit technical for me. I know that CO2. There's a lot of things going on with CO2. CO2 is used for extraction, but that's not the question. The question is, I'm not going to be able to give a very
Okay,
specific.
that's all right. How about?
But I want to give a response, which is this is one of the beauties about legal cannabis. The fact that people are able to apply technology, apply science to lower the cost of production, improve the quality, and many other facets. So what Chris brings up is one area. I've toured a lot of grows, and I've seen the CO2. Traditional companies like Air Products, tanks sitting in these facilities. So it's definitely progress for the industry, and it's going to be very important. Cannabis can be a commodity, and you have to be able to produce it at a low cost. In the past, all you had to do was to produce it, and then you could get the black market price. You didn't have to worry about paying taxes and complying with regulations and all that other stuff. That world is changing. So things like using CO2 and regulating that efficiently is very important.
All right, another question out of the chat. Have you ever read or studied the esoteric knowledge of cannabis and/or plant-based medicine?
Is that a book title?
No. I just think it's just general. He said
So
esoteric.
yeah, when I came into this industry in early 2013, I was pretty ignorant to the medicinal benefits of cannabis. I've obviously spent a lot of time over the last almost 3 years getting up to speed, reading studies that tend to be done in other countries, unfortunately, but hopefully that will change. It's certainly one of the things that's really lacking, in my opinion. There's a lot of anecdotal evidence out there, and I tend to think, based on the stories that I read and the people I talk to, that it's evident. But for medical marijuana to really proliferate, even in a country like Canada, where it's federally legal right now, you have to get the doctors on board. The doctor societies are against cannabis uniformly. You can't find a medical society that endorses it yet. And the reason for that is we don't have the proper clinical trials that they like to see, the evidence presented in the way they like, so that they can basically cover their ass. And so hopefully we'll make progress here. If it's not here, it's going to be in places like Canada and Australia. And here I want to give a shout out to Rand Paul and other senators who have authored what's called the CARES Act. We've talked about that before on the show, but that addresses this whole issue of medical research along with banking and some other issues as well. You can never count on any legislation to pass, and the odds are pretty low statistically. But this is something that I really hope uh, comes more into the public domain. I just wrote something this morning, and it's kind of shocking to me. 58% of people in the United States favor legalization. Period. More like high 80s favor medical marijuana. This is like everybody wants it, but it doesn't happen, and we really need to be talking about this. For cannabis to be implemented legally and responsibly, we have to have this medical research. And so I think what the questioner is addressing is a great topic, but anecdotal evidence doesn't cut it. We need to have scientific studies of these medicinal benefits.
All right, one final question for you here, Alan. About a year away from a presidential election here. Toss up in the Republicans. Looks like Hillary's going to eke out the Democratic nomination here. Any changes on the political landscape either way, if it remained Democratic president or if Republicans gets in there, which right now is not looking very likely?
So, it's interesting. Last night, Bernie Sanders stole the thunder from the Republicans. There was a debate in Colorado, which, of all places, you would have expected them to talk about cannabis. The question was asked of John Kasich, and he punted immediately. Didn't even answer. Just took the question and went in a totally different direction. There's only one Republican that's come out with a sane response to what's going on, and that's Rand Paul. Beyond that, some of them are probably not a threat, and some of them are downright scary, like Chris Christie, who says he would stop the experiment immediately and enforce federal law. So this is really antiquated thinking, and I think it could cost him the presidency. I just told you 58% of people want legalization. As long as he's going to be loud and anti-cannabis, that's not going to help his cause. Bernie Sanders, at the same time, came out fully in support of federal legalization and says it's a state's right, which I always thought that was a Republican argument. The states have the right to determine things like this. They certainly do on alcohol and tobacco, and cannabis should be pari passu. So, wow, trying to handicap these things. The likely scenario is that we continue the state-by-state process and that the federal government stays out of the way. It'd be nice to say that the federal government would stop acting like an ostrich, but I'm not counting on that. Some of these Republicans scare the crap out of me.
We've been on the line with Alan Brochstein. He's the author of the 420 Investment Letter, giving us a broad perspective here on the cannabis industry and related stocks. Thanks a lot, Alan, for coming on. We'll speak to you again soon.
Thanks, Joel. Take it easy.